Chairman of Johnson School of Business, Rotarian Paul Harris Fellow, Mr. T.S. Natarajan, Vice Chairman, Mr. Kalaimani, Vice Chairman, Mr. Kumar, Mr. Raghavendra Ravi, Dean of Johnson School of Business, Mr. Mohan, Deputy Director, members of the faculty, distinguished invitees, graduating students, members of the family of graduating students, and dear students. It gives me great pleasure to be here amidst all of you to participate in this convocation function in this beautiful setting. It's almost like a dream setting, Your institute is really an ideal place for higher learning. They say higher learning takes place when there is a conducive atmosphere. And your chairman has created an excellent infrastructure here, beautiful building. My compliments to him. It is not just this beautiful building, but within a short period of less than 5 years, your school has carved a niche for itself amongst schools of business in South. And it's not going to be long before it is counted among the best. I'm sure with their enthusiasm and dedication, the day is not far off. Your chairman is a philanthropist, an educationist, connected with several schools. He's also serving the syndicate, a socially conscious person serving the society through Rotary and industry organizations. He, together with his able sons, has built up this Johnson's brand in a very nice way, and he's backed it up with good manufacturing facilities. Students of this institute are therefore fortunate to have such an eminent person, along with his two sons, actively involved in the administration, because when a management school has an entrepreneur or an industrialist actively participating, it gives opportunities for the students to imbibe all the good qualities from them, especially hard work and diligent work. So you're all very fortunate that you have been exposed to some very illustrious people. Students of today, especially those who are graduating today, are certainly a very enviable lot. I'm sure all of you will agree with me. Indian economy is growing, especially industry and services are both growing at double-digit growth rates, throwing up a lot of opportunities for young graduates. In fact, today, if you ask anyone in the industry, they will say their restricting factor, which prevents them from going faster, is nothing but availability of manpower. So there is acute shortage of good graduates, good people to be employed in the industry. So all of you are very fortunate that even before you finish your schools, there are many companies knocking at the door to recruit you. It's not just the good part of our economy that is creating these wonderful opportunities for you. It's also the perception that India enjoys. When one thinks of India today, one no more thinks of elephants and snake charmers. When one thinks of India today, one thinks of a country full of knowledge workers, doctors, engineers, scientists, IT professionals, research workers, more recently spiritual philosophers, multi-billionaires, ready to lap up even the biggest of the companies which is put up for sale in the world. I mean, this is the kind of perception which one gets when one thinks of India today. Most of the big companies in the world are looking at our premium institutions like IITs and IIMs. They are beginning to be rated higher than Harvards and MITs. I'm sure you would have all read that today some of the highest paid new recruits are from India. Many of the people who are recruited from the premier institutes of India get higher compensation packages than students from Harvard and MIT. Microsoft Bill Gates once said that if someone didn't qualify to get into the IITs, then they would probably apply to the Stanford or MIT. That was the rating of Indian institutions by no less a person than Bill Gates. So we are all in a very envious situation. The whole world is looking at us and the whole world wants to grab us. So all you have to do is think big. The elevation of Indra Nui to become the chief executive officer, chairman and executive officer of one of the largest companies within the top 5 in the world could not have come at a better time. I'm sure all this must be a tremendous source of motivation and encouragement to all of you. Well, all this is the positives. There are 2 negatives, one of which I would like you to be sensitive to, not so much to be bothered about. The second one, of course, is something which I want to deliberate upon for the rest of the evening. The first one is, despite our fantastic growth rates and booming economy, 1 in 4 Indian is still below the poverty line. 1 in 4 still doesn't have 2 square meals, despite the country growing at 12% in industry and services. In my opinion, I am not an economist, but my gut feel, this is nothing to do with the economic situation of our nation, and it has everything to do with the bankruptcy of values which we have now reached. I would blame this situation predominantly to industrial greed or corporate greed, and to a less extent political corruption. So to that extent, I would like all of you to be sensitive that it is a corporate world that is responsible for not allowing the wealth to percolate down to the bottom layers. We try to manipulate the government policies whichever way we like and try to retain whatever wealth the country creates and make it stay right at the top. We don't allow the typical trickle theory to work. Of course, the politicians are willing to help us, but really the culprit is the industry or the corporate greed. So although you are just entering the corporate world and you shouldn't really be overtly concerned about this, it is necessary to remember this and be sensitive to it. The second not so positive side of the situation today is a report which was presented to the Tamil Nadu government by a consultancy firm which was hired at the request of the industry. The industry and trade in Tamil Nadu especially have been crying hoarse that they are not getting enough good people to work. On the other hand, Tamil Nadu has the highest number of engineering colleges offering MBAs and MCAs. In spite of all this, we still find there is a huge shortage of talented manpower. So a study was commissioned to find out the real reason for this. The finding of the study was 20% of all graduates coming out of Tamil Nadu schools are immediately employable. Another 20% are employable if their conceptual skills and communication skills are a bit more fine-tuned or honed. Maybe with 2-3 months of intense training, they could become employable. But sadly, a majority, over 60%, were not employable at all based on their degrees, and they had to be given some lower level jobs. What could possibly be the reason for this kind of a situation? On one side, the economy is booming, enough opportunities, Indians are occupying the best seats in the world, in the corporate world. There should be sufficient motivation for all students to really apply themselves. There should be absolutely no reason for them not to want to at least apply themselves. So the reason must be something beyond motivation. The reason must be something beyond their desire to do well. So this got me thinking, and again, it is my opinion, it's not based on some research finding. I think this situation is there because students of today have not cultivated the habit of enjoying learning. Students have not converted learning into an enjoyable activity. Some of you must have already started wondering as to why I am talking about learning to an audience which is graduating. Typically, we think that when we complete our education, especially postgraduate education, we are very learned and there is very little for us to learn. So why should someone to this audience address about learning? Here I would like to remind you that graduating from MBA means that you have acquired certain skill sets, certain techniques, and above all, you have learned how to learn. You should remember the Tamil saying, கற்றது கைமண். I would like somebody to complete it. Yes. So you should always remember this, and you should know that life is one long journey of continuous learning. The day you stop learning, you become irrelevant in a few days from then. So although you have completed your graduation and in a few hours or minutes you are going to receive your degree certificates, I would like you to remember that learning is a very important activity for the rest of your life, and you can achieve greatness if you convert learning into an enjoyable activity. Fortunately for today's students, after you leave this institute, you still have several avenues to learn. You could identify a mentor in the organization where you're working. This would be a very, very good practice. If you can identify somebody who's willing to teach you, who's willing to guide you, cling on to him and learn as much as possible from him. You can take up visiting faculty in some management school or some institution, because there's nothing better than being a teacher to learn. Because if you have to go to a class, I'm sure you'll be very well prepared, and in order to be well prepared, you have to do a lot more reading than a student would. And another very popular way of learning, today's students are fortunate. Director of IIT always used to say that we have come a long way from the days of Gurukulam to Shishyakulam. Today we are in a Shishyakulam situation. The student can choose his teacher, log on to the net, get onto the site of the teacher, learn from him whatever he wants, have interactive sessions. There are several lectures which you can download and learn. Most of them are free. Access to several libraries are also free. So today's students are very, very fortunate. You don't have to be chosen by your teacher. You're fortunate enough to choose your teacher. So today you have tremendous opportunities to continue to learn even while you're busy working. Another reason why I would like to emphasize continuous learning today to all of you is there is a misconception, especially some of the people in the industry who have graduated out years ago and who have gone up the ladder by sheer experience, will tell you the moment you enter the companies, forget whatever you have learned and start learning through experience on your job. Please don't take them very seriously. Experience-based conclusions, if it is not backed up by sufficient theoretical knowledge or analytical research, will more often than otherwise mislead. Let me repeat, because this is very, very important and it's a subtle concept. I would like all of you to understand this. Experience-based conclusions, not backed up by sound theoretical knowledge or analysis, will more often than otherwise lead you to wrong conclusions. Because we must all understand that almost all the experiences that we encounter on a day-to-day basis is either relative or seemingly real. Either relative or seemingly real. This is what our scriptures say, our philosophers say, but in day-to-day activities you will find you can apply this logic. For years, we all believed that the earth was in the center of the solar system. Every morning we got up, we looked out and saw the sun rising in the east. And by midday it was right on top of our head, and in the evening it was setting in the west. Sitting on the earth, it looked as though the sun was going around us, and we believed this for years. And this was the Theo-centric theory of our solar system. This is purely based on our experience. I mean, nobody can dispute that experience. Every one of us saw it and even today see it. That the sun is rising, we are sitting on a stationary earth, and the sun is going around or the moon is going around. Similarly, if you look at the world, as you walk around, you will find it as a flat piece of land. For years we concluded that earth is a disc and not a globe, till somebody came and scientifically proved otherwise. So what I would like to emphasize is you will encounter similar experiences right through your life in your work. So if you simply make conclusions based on your experience, which is either relative or seemingly real, you will make wrong conclusions. So it's all the more important that you keep your theoretical knowledge and analytical skills as sharp as just before your examination. So it's very, very important for even graduates, if you have not already converted learning into an enjoyable experience, to convert learning into an enjoyable experience. When I say this, by implication, it means that the choice of converting any experience into an enjoyable one or otherwise is with us. That is, we control what we want to enjoy and we control what we don't want to enjoy. I don't know if you will agree with me, but believe me, barring one or two or three experiences, 99.99 recurring, most of our experiences are neither universally enjoyable nor universally not enjoyable. They are just experiences, and whether it is enjoyable or otherwise depends on what we project on them. If you take, for example, music, I don't think anybody can point out a particular music which is enjoyed by everyone or a particular music which is hated by everyone. A person who enjoys Carnatic music, who can sink into it for hours without realizing what's happening around him, but if you play some heavy metal or rock, maybe it will take him maximum 5 minutes and he will be reaching out for an aspirin. Somebody who likes all this Western music, rock and everything, you play some classical Western music, Mozart or whatever, and in 5 minutes you will find him snoring. If you take food, a vegetarian might lose his appetite if he has to sit opposite to a Frenchman having his steak rare. The same Frenchman who, without caring a thought, could carve out his meat with the blood coming out, but if he went to China and he was an honored guest, and if he was offered one of those typical starters, sliced live snakes put in a cup of sauce or gravy, he will lose his appetite too. So one man's food is another man's poison. There is nothing universally enjoyable either in music, that is sense organ ear or sense organ tongue. Like this I can go on listing sports. Even though our country was rated number 6 in the World Cup probability, we know, we have all read in the newspapers that there was this fan of cricket who enjoyed it so much, he couldn't stand India not qualifying into the Super 8 and he had a heart attack. The same cricket crazy nation, I'm sure we'll have millions of people who will more than agree with Bernard Shaw and say that cricket is a game played by 11 fools and watched by 11,000 other fools. If you went to Europe, they're all as crazy as we are about cricket, about football. And if you went to the US, it's basketball or maybe something else. There's nothing universal even about sports. So this list goes on. So there's nothing universal about any activity being a likable or a dislikable activity. It all depends on what we project on it. If you want to convert learning into an enjoyable activity, all you have to do is first believe that the ability to convert any activity into an enjoyable one is with you. You must have total faith in whatever I say. You can contemplate it when you go back home. I'm sure you'll find it convincing. And once you decide that it is possible for you to convert learning into an enjoyable activity, then you will have to persist with it. Initially, it certainly will not be an enjoyable activity. You'll have to continue to perform that activity with a total faith that it will one day become an enjoyable activity. And believe me, it will surely become an enjoyable activity sooner than later. I'd like to give you two simple examples, one negative and one positive, to convince you that it is possible to convert any activity into an enjoyable one. I don't know if there are any smokers in this audience. I wish and pray not. It's one of the most harmful habits. But let me tell you, even smoking, which is otherwise perceived as an enjoyable activity, I believe when the smoker smokes on the first time, it is a terrible activity. It causes severe throat ache, coughing, headache. You lose your appetite for a day or two. You lose sleep. It is certainly not a pleasant experience when you smoke for the first time. But somehow or other, this person who didn't have a good experience, based on his peer group pressure or his perception of the lifestyle of a person who smokes, continues to smoke. And very soon it becomes so much of an enjoyable activity that even when the doctor tells him that if he doesn't give it up, he will end up with a cancer, he still finds it difficult to give it up. It becomes such an enjoyable activity. What started off as a very, very repulsive activity becomes an enjoyable activity because one pursued it. I can narrate a simple incident from my own life. I'm addicted to tea drinking. I take about 8 to 10 cups of tea a day. Till I was 40 years old, it didn't really matter to me. I was able to digest it. My metabolism was good enough. It didn't show on my waistline. But this magical figure of 40 and things started happening. So it didn't agree with me. This 15 cups of spoons of sugar didn't really agree with me. So I had to decide either to cut out on my number of cups of tea or cut out sugar completely from tea. So I contemplated. It was too difficult for me to cut down on the number of cups of tea, so I had choicelessly to cut down sugar. So I started drinking tea without sugar. It took me about a month before I could tolerate drinking. The first cup was absolutely horrible. I went to the basin and spat it out, but I persisted. Within a month, it became a neutral activity, neither pleasurable nor otherwise. And believe me, after a couple of months, I started enjoying my tea without sugar, so much so when somebody offered me tea with sugar, it was difficult for me to take it. It didn't stop there. When I crossed 50, even the half cup of milk in each cup of tea into 8 started bothering me. So I had to take the next decision. What do? Do I cut down on the number of cups of tea or cut down on milk? I chose to cut down on milk. This time, I was able to master it within a few weeks. It became a totally enjoyable activity. So believe me, all of you can convert any activity which you desire to make it into an enjoyable activity, including learning. If you want to excel in something, you must be passionate about it. If you're an artist, if you're a musician, or a theater personality, or a scientist, unless you have a passion about what you're doing, you cannot excel. You can do well, but you cannot excel. So if you want to excel in life, you have to convert that important activity of learning into an enjoyable activity. In order to do so, the second stage, the first stage is to believe, the second stage is to persist. In order to persist, you need willpower. Without willpower, it's very difficult to persist. You will give it up even before it gets converted into an enjoyable activity. But not all of us are blessed with this rare commodity called willpower. So how do we, majority of us who do not have willpower, still go ahead and convert learning into an enjoyable experience? I'm sure some of you must be chemistry students or chemical engineers. When you find a reaction not taking place at the right speed, if it is very, very slow, and you want to make the reaction take place fast, vigorously, what do? You introduce a catalyst. So when, even for a simple thing like a chemical reaction, we don't give up and say it is too slow, I'm helpless. We rake our brains, we do everything possible, we find a proper catalyst and we introduce it and then make the reaction take place rapidly. It is certainly possible to find similar things in the process of converting learning into an enjoyable experience. You can look for a catalyst and introduce the catalyst. Any guesses as what could possibly be this catalyst for a person with weak willpower? This catalyst is a universal catalyst. It is applicable in all reactions. It is called the grace of God. You invoke this catalyst called the grace of God into any of your activities, and believe me, it will take place as rapidly as you desire or as rapidly as your sankalpa is. So it's very easy for anyone with or without willpower to convert learning into an enjoyable experience. Once you convert that into an enjoyable experience and you become passionate about learning, it doesn't matter which walk of life you choose, you will for sure succeed. And when you go back to bed tonight, you can all dream that you will be the next Indira Nooyi from this country. With these few words, I would like to thank my dear friend Kumar for giving me this wonderful opportunity to share some of my thoughts in this lovely ambience in Johnson School. And I invoke the grace of Almighty to make all of you convert learning into an enjoyable experience and do well for yourself and bring good name for your school and society. Thank you.